In the east, there are 70,000 internally displaced people who've had to flee their homes in the last 3 months from the bombing and the killing, and are in refugee camps, which I visited. And often these armed groups are coming into these refugee camps and forcibly taking out the kids. So what we're doing is providing a presence in these refugee camps to try to make it safer. And what we've been told is it's much safer when we're present, or even if we're coming and visit, as often as we can. I met a very, very courageous Muslim leader in Batticaloa who has faced death threats for the last 20 years, and is one of the most courageous guys I've ever met. And he is committed to trying to build a demilitarized zone within Sri Lanka, and is personally going to go. He knows the top leadership of all the different sides. He's going to go to them and say, we want to create this demilitarized zone, peace zone, and we are asking you to guarantee the safety of the populations and to respect that. And he's asking Nonviolent Peace Force and anybody else we can recruit, including UN agencies. The Anglican bishop is very interested in this in Sri Lanka, etc., to be an ongoing nonviolent presence in this demilitarized zone. So that's something that's right in process. There are specific individuals, including human rights defenders and priests and others working for peace, that have active death threats against them. And when that's happening, sometimes whole communities. And so we accompany those people, similar to what Professor Negler was saying happened in Guatemala, to make it safer for them. Sarvodya, you may have heard of, is probably the largest Gandhi-inspired movement in the world. It's active in 12 or 15,000 communities in Sri Lanka. We're working with Sarvodya to develop a rapid response peace brigade. So these are people trained in active nonviolent peacemaking. They can go into conflict areas when tensions are beginning to boil, to try to help create some peace and to divert that energy from war making into peacemaking. We met with a number of the United Nations personnel while we were there, and they are just extremely impressed with what the Nonviolent Peace Force is doing. And partly, I think, and we met embassy people also from foreign embassies, I think they're feeling totally ashamed of how little they're able to do. And partly, they represent governments and all this stuff. And when there's any kind of danger, they tell their staff, stay in the embassy, stay in your office, don't go out there. And here we're out in the communities and on the front lines. And partly, we've been able to do the homework of finding out what's happening out there and then saying to the UN, et cetera, these folks need your help. And they can rely on us and come to trust us as people that are really in touch with the people. So our role is to be on the ground in the areas where there's most conflict and where civilians are most endangered. As I said, we give moral protection, moral support. We're giving protection as an international presence that the world is watching, to be a monitoring presence so that the United Nations and others know what we're doing. And I won't tell the specifics, but through our homework, we were able to document this child soldier stuff that then UN agencies were able to really go international and challenge that on our behalf. We're able to actually tell the truth about what's going on the ground and to provide the political space for local peacemakers to do their work. We also have active invitations from other parts of the world. In Colombia, Peace Brigades International and Fellowship of Reconciliation are accompanying one community, a peace community, that is saying no to all the warring sides. Well, there are 16 or 17 other peace communities throughout Colombia that are saying no to the government military, to the paramilitaries, and to the guerrillas. And their leaders are getting assassinated and disappeared. And they're asking the Nonviolent Peace Force to come. So we've decided as soon as we can develop the financial resources, we're going to go. And we're doing our first training in Spanish in Ecuador in May of this year. In Mindanao, in the southern Philippines, where there's also been a civil war for many years, there are very courageous local peacemakers and human rights defenders that are trying to protect civilian populations who time and again get targeted in this stuff. And they have asked us to come and accompany them. And just last week, we found the money from several major donors, contributors, we're going to be sending our first team of 6 people there a month after next to begin working with local peacemakers. And in northern Uganda, we are going to be sending a team of people to work, again, with local peacemakers who are asking us to come. A guy named Rolf Carrière, who is a Dutch man from the Netherlands, has been the head of UNICEF for many years. And he's now retired, but is very excited about the power of nonviolent peacekeeping. And that is an alternative to armed peacekeeping or armed intervention. And so he's spending his time on his own money, talking with his former colleagues in the United Nations about what we're doing. And he found many of them that said, if the local UNICEF, UN, High Commission for Refugees, et cetera, say nonviolent peacekeeper will really make the difference, we will support that morally and financially for the actual deployment costs, which is the major part of it. But what we need to do is to recruit and train 500 people to be ready to respond to those kind of requests. So our goal is to recruit and train 500 people from all parts of the world to be a part of a nonviolent reserves, ready to go into any of these conflict areas at the invitation of the UN or other groups. We're about to also start a short-term deployment in Guatemala. You probably don't even know about this, but our co-chair, Claudia Samayoa, who's been doing very courageous work in Guatemala, is facing death threats again. So we're recruiting fluent-speaking, Spanish-speaking people that would like to go to Guatemala and essentially be her nonviolent bodyguard. And I spent a couple days doing this a year ago, and nothing would be more exciting. I don't mean exciting because somebody's there with a gun, but exciting because of the kind of people that you meet and the kind of what she and others are doing every day in trying to, among other things, they're trying to get to the bottom of who did this massive genocidal violence in the 80s. And that's very dangerous because a lot of people don't want anybody to know who did that. But that's what they're doing. Oaxaca, where, as you know, there's been a massive nonviolent struggle. People are asking us to come in and do nonviolence training. So we hope later this spring to be responding to that. And in Lebanon, there's interest on the Israeli-Lebanon border to have a nonviolent presence. John Paul Lederach, who's a colleague of ours, has written a paper in which he's proposing 250,000 nonviolent peacekeepers. And he suggests ways to finance that, including a peace tax on any war industry that's going to make money off of bombs and bullets. Needs to give just 2% toward a nonviolent peace force. There's businesses that are making profits off of stuff. They can give 2% of their. So anyway, we could do this if the world decides that this is politically important. So things that you can do, you could consider giving 1 or 2 years of your life to being a part of the Nonviolent Peace Force. And if you're interested in doing that, it's not just courses in nonviolence, which are very important, but beginning to try to get some experience in doing this kind of work in your own communities. After. Well, I mean, you probably heard there was a tent city in Richmond, in areas where most people were getting killed. And local community people set up a tent city. Same idea as what we're doing in Sri Lanka. And said, this is a peace zone. And they invited other people to come and be present there. Well, I think very few of us did. But that would be an example of the kind of thing that people could do. Just finally to say that one of the things that we're doing right now, if any of you are interested, on the first Thursday of every month at the Federal Building in San Francisco, we're doing a die-in. 560,000 Iraqi people have died in this war. 3,100 Americans have been killed, in addition to many, many thousands wounded for life, mentally as well as physically. And we're trying to remember that. And we're reading the names of the war dead. And many of us have been arrested each Thursday, because that's not the first Thursday of each month, because that's not appreciated. But at 1 o'clock this Thursday and the first Thursday of every month, that's what we're doing over in San Francisco. And any of you are welcome to look at nonviolence in action. So that's a little bit about the Nonviolent Peace Force. And as I said, the sign-up list, if you would like to be informed and about new openings, we're going to be doing, we hope, if we can find the funds, at least 4 core trainings this year of people that are really interested in working actively in the Nonviolent Peace Force. And so now I took a little longer than I planned, but I'd like to hear your questions or comments. Yes? Did we what? Yes, all the expenses of people on the ground are covered: food, shelter, medical insurance, etc. And we give $800 a month, either to your family or you get it when you leave. The idea is not to live high on the hog while you're in the country, but if you need it for college loans or supporting your family, whatever, that's what it's for. Or it's a, whatever you call it. It's when you're finished, readjustment allowance, like the Peace Corps has. Other questions, comments? About them. Yeah. The question was, what if we have more requests to come to conflict areas than we actually can do? Well, that's the case. I mean, we've had requests from at least 15 conflict areas. And if you look at our website, you'll see, among other things, a link to, well, there's several things. There's a link to Peace Workers UK website, which is where you can sign up on a register to say, I'm interested in being a member of the Nonviolent Peace Force. You can look at our feasibility study, in which we looked at what are the lessons to be learned from past peacemaking efforts. And among that is criteria, or where it's most important for us to go. And that when we have more requests than we can actually go to, that's it's looking at what are the criteria. So I mean, I mentioned some of that, but it's where there are actual local peacemakers or groups on the ground that are inviting us. It is where we think that nonviolent peacekeepers could actually make a difference. It's not just be nice if we were there, but the people on the ground say this is going to save lives, this is going to help move us from war to peace, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. But
I think one of the criteria is this going to be acknowledged by the rest of the world if we do so?
Yeah. So it's visibility. Yeah. But and our International Governing Council makes those decisions. I mean, the staff does the research and the groundwork, but then that international body makes the actual decision on a deployment. Yes. Are we what? Where we're being invited to go? Well, it's the whole range. It's often not the civilians that are fighting the government. It's armed factions, and you can often say there may be some justice on one or both sides, but it's the civilians that are getting caught in the middle. I mean, Burma is another example. It's just a very, very repressive government. And Aung San Suu Kyi is leading a very courageous nonviolent movement. Tibet is another example. The odds are very great against the Tibetans. Israel-Palestine, where there are people on both sides that are nonviolently trying to transform that situation into a more peaceful one. In Zimbabwe, where again there's a very repressive government, but very courageous movement, and especially the women. They're resisting that and are getting beaten up and arrested, and their children are getting arrested with them. It's similar to what Kosovo was. I think the place is going to explode if somehow we can't get some support, to those people that are struggling nonviolently to challenge that. So, but it's, as I say, in my feeling, the top priority is where there is a local nonviolent movement that is really trying to change that situation, and to have internationals present to make that space for that to happen. Civilians are actually getting caught in the middle of this stuff all over the world, and so our need is everywhere. And we've just developed a strategic plan. A woman who lives here in Berkeley, John Bernstein, has, with input from our whole constituency all around the world, developed a strategic plan for the next 10 years in terms of how do we grow from where we are to where we want to be, of thousands of peacemakers. And that's something that's, before too long we'll have that on our website as well.
Say something about the training.
Okay. That's another thing you can look at on our website. But we've developed a 3-week training course called Opening Space for Democracy. And about half of that is also on the Training for Change website. There's a link from our website, just trainingforchange.org. And it's really training in third-party nonviolent intervention. So it's looking at what's the history of doing this kind of nonviolent peacekeeping in areas of conflict, what worked and what didn't work, of looking at accompaniment and monitoring, interposition, and how do we do that, doing role plays and whole simulation games where you actually get to practice this stuff. It's team building, because obviously just having a bunch of individuals trying to do their own thing in an area of conflict is 1% as effective as having people really working together well as a team. It's multicultural. It's learning to work multiculturally, and how the importance of really being observant and respectful of local cultures. I think having Americans, we often have this tendency to come in and say, we know how to do things, and as this is the right way. Well, that's not going to work in this kind of situation. So, but a lot of role playing, really looking at what does nonviolence mean and how we practice that, both on a personal level as well as in a war zone. But if you look at the website, you'll see a whole lot of that training manual. That's Training for Change. Yes. Well, our ideal is to have people that are fluent in the language. And when we go to Colombia, for instance, fluent Spanish will be a requirement. Sri Lanka is much more difficult because Sinhalese and Tamil, and the Tamil they speak in Sri Lanka is different than the Tamil in India, it's much more difficult. So what we've done there is to actually hire local people that, after we get to know them. They're not partisan one side or another, who actually work both as translators and as part of the teams. But ideally, and language training is part of the training. In addition to that 3-week intensive core training, we have in-country training, which will and language training is a major part of that. Yes. How do we decide when to leave a country? Well, that's a good question. In our feasibility study, we also have criteria for when to leave, and that's one of the things that I think even in war making they need. I mean, in Iraq, when is the time to leave? When it seems like we're no longer appreciated. But so, in many of these areas, in most of these areas, we have local partners, who are, as I said, the heart and soul of this kind of the peacemaking. When they say, you've made a real helpful contribution here, but I think we can do it on our own. That's we need to be listening to them. We need to look at our own experience. Are we really making a difference, both in terms of protecting people and helping moving from war to peace? And if it gets, that's on the positive side. And if it gets so dangerous that we have to put most of our energy into how to protect our own people, as opposed to protecting the people there, and/or if the two sides don't care what international people think, or whether they get killed or disappeared, that's a clear sign we're not really. That's not the best use of our resources.
It's like fasting against the lover. It's kind of like fasting against these criteria for fasting people that don't care what happens to you. You don't have time to make it. You're not sitting in
This is a slight aside, but this is a good question for you. Is learning about Satyagraha. We often think of Buddhists as being very peaceful. Well, in Sri Lanka right now, there's very kind of right-wing or nationalist Buddhist monks that are fasting to get the government to end the ceasefire and declare full-scale war against the Tamil Tigers. Well, some people call that Satyagraha action. I'm afraid I don't. I think there has to be some element based on love, or justice or compassion, for the other, not just thinking about your own self for it to really be Satyagraha. But you'll have to develop your own answer to that question. But that's happening right now.
Well, I think that was all of our time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.